This is a seat off my Clansman off the back of it. It's been sitting out in full sun for 3 to 5 years. This is the underside. It wasn't even done with aqua coat underneath. You can see where the aqua coat comes around to. Here you'll see the holes weren't sealed, so moisture's gone in through there. Notice how it's run along the grain and up the side and discoloured it. Same with it, you'll find they're all the same, even down the other end. So that's moisture coming in through a hole. You've got to try and seal those. Now this is the top. You'll notice I've got to it before it's completely broken down. This here, where I'm scraping, is where the aqua coats actually come away from the epoxy. What happens over the years, moisture's got underneath it and it's caused it to pull away. So I'm going to sand all that back, and I believe I've got to it before the epoxy has died. It's discoloured a bit, but I'm just going to touch it up. Here on the ends you'll see where either ropes have been rubbing over there and it hasn't been as thick as it should, the layer of epoxy, and the moisture's gone through the aqua coat, then it's gone through the epoxy. I'm just going to rub that area back, coat it with 3 or 4 coats of boat coat and bring it back to life. I'd say a lot of it is where the boat coat's been too thin once it's been sanded after the aqua coat's been put over it, and the moisture will go through the aqua coat, and because there's not a thick enough layer of epoxy there, it'll break down. So I've now sanded the seat. I've just cleaned off around where the holes are. See here, there was moisture tracking back there. There's still a little bit. I'm not worried about that. It's discoloured back that far. And in these corners back, I've done around the edges. Right around. I've gone right around the edge and taken it off. Notice there's still epoxy on the top. That's fine. So I'm going to start coating. I've applied a coat of resin right around on the bare timber areas using boat coat, non-yellowing hardener with 1 part and 5 TPRDA. You'll even notice, look how it's drawn right into the timber in places. Might have been a little bit thin, or the timber's quite porous in those spots. See how it's drawn right in? That means the TPRDA is doing its job nicely. TPRDA is a diluted form of resin that's got some other goodies in it that allow it to penetrate into the timber there. I've now put a second coat on the sides and a single coat right across the bottom. I'm going to put another coat on and do the sides again. Then once they're cured, I'm going to sand the sides, hand sand, and then I'll do the top and the sides 2 or 3 coats as well. I've now sanded the top and the sides back, and notice these here, I've pretty well cut through. If you get that, don't put aqua coat over the top of it. You've got to put more epoxy on when you get to that. So I've taken all the gloss off, looking pretty good. So now I'm going to put 3 coats on the top and sides, and if you have a look, I've also done underneath, and I've taped around the edge just past the radius. So I want to bring the boat coat pretty well around to there, and any dags that come around onto the flat, they'll be on the masking tape. Makes it easy to clean up and pull off, ready to put the aqua coat on it. We're at the next step in restoring my boat seat. What I've done here, we've epoxied, and when you epoxy, no matter how hard you try, you're always going to have these dags around the bottom side. Don't let it worry you, don't sweat it. Just mask around it, and what I've done, I've already cut this area back. Get your masking tape, run your sander along it until you just cut back to the edge, and then your tape will come away. See, I've done right along here, see how it's cut in? I've done right along this side, so the tape will just pull off really easy now. So we just get our tape and give him a tug. Because I'm working one-handed here, it'll be a little bit more difficult. See how it's pulling away? Where the tape is close like that, and I've cut through it, you may have to just dig your nail in and pull it off. Pull as much as you can off, because if you try and hand sand it, what'll happen, you'll clog your sandpaper. That'll create more problems for you. So I've got a bit of epoxy over the other side there. Not worried about this. I'm not going to aqua coat this underside because it's the seat on the back of my boat, This side faces down. It was out there for 4 or 5 years before, just with the boat coat, and there wasn't enough UV reflecting off the water to worry it. It had dulled a bit, but nothing to get excited about. So that's our next step. Now after I finish doing all this, I'll then hand sand all our edges, not power sand, and I'll bring that up so it's looking beautiful on the top. So this is what we've got so far. You'll see it's a bit darker on the edges. I went right back to solid timber there because there was quite a bit of damage along the edge, and I started cutting through it anyway, and it would have looked daggy if I had patches of lighter stuff like this and darker stuff, so it was easier to cut it all back and start from square one. But I left the old epoxy on there underneath here, and it's still looking fairly good. So we'll sand that back and we'll get some aqua coat on it, and she'll look like new and sit out in the full sun for another 3 to 5 years without worrying about it. Right, the next step after you've sanded and tidied up is to wash down with hot soapy water. I use a scour pad. I find it gives you equivalent to about a 320 finish. Hot soapy water, any detergent will do. I tend to use whatever's in the laundry at the time. Today it's powdered laundry detergent. But the important thing is to scrub it down, and when you wash it down with fresh water, if you see the water fish-eyeing or moving away, you know, like on a freshly polished car, if there's polish on there and you put water on it, it'll tend to what we call fish-eye. In other words, it won't sit on areas, it'll tend to gather together because the surface tension is too low for it to grab on. Now, if when you wash your doohickey down after you've got it sanded, and you wash it off with fresh water and you get that means you've got contamination. You need to scrub it more with hot soapy water. Always hot, just a bucket, you know, and give it a good wash down. The hottest you can handle it. Hotter the better, because that'll help lift contamination off. And away you go. And that's it. Simple as that. Don't use solvents. What we've found with solvents is that you've got contamination here. Unless you get a clean piece of rag, you just like to put it down there. The other problem with solvents is, now that we wash with cold water, when they weave fabric, they use a silicone spray onto the looms to lubricate it. You can wash something 20, 30 times with cold water, and the traces of silicone will still be in there. You get that piece of rag, and you put solvent in it, you could well put silicone onto your surface. Don't do it. Hot soapy water is all you need to clean. It does a brilliant job with the scour pad. I'm about to put the first coat of aqua coat on. I washed it down and then I left it dry pretty well, and I've run the brush over it and spread the water. Notice there's no fish eyeing. A couple of spots where it's drying out where there's less water, that's fine. This is a good time to put your first coat on. As the surface is going like this, it's a good indicator that you're pretty well there. Ooh, see that? We've got some fish eyeing. That's contamination. Wonder what's caused that. Could even be my fingerprint going on there, you know. Bugger. Might be just as drying out faster. We'll see. Here's our seat. We've got a second coat on. It's looking pretty good, except it was hot and it tipped off really fast. I only did this 5-10 minutes ago and it's already gone. Look how I tried to play with it and I stuffed it because it was already going off. Look here. Never play with this product, and I should know better. If you go back over it and it's already started to tip off, that's when you'll have problems, and that's what happened to me here. And I'll see if I can fix it up in the next coat. I've just finished putting a fourth coat on. I've gone to 20% water. It's flowing a lot better as hot as it is today. But notice it's gone milky. That means I've put the next coat on a bit too soon. Don't sweat it. What'll happen, as the water comes out of it and it dries, that milkiness will disappear. So I'll do a little video. I'm going out for 4 or 5 hours now that I've put the fourth coat on, and we'll have a look at it when I get back.